Guess what? Sunday Sanctuary is produced by a non-profit, which makes perfect sense, right? And it's also quite fun because you never know where the money's going to come from. So this is your invitation to join that fun by supporting this kaupapa and helping to share something you love with even more people looking for soul-nourishing spiritual conversations. It's simple. You can choose between a one-off donation or become a regular supporter and help Sam and I keep making Sunday Sanctuary. To give now, head to our website, sundaysanctuary.nz. Kia ora, and thank you.
Baby, I can find my treasure. There's too much for me to do. Baby, I can find my treasure. Maybe my treasure rests in you.
Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
E ngā manu, e ngā reo, mai ngā hau e whā. Ta tū mai nei ki te manga o tēnei rā kau whakaruru hau. Tau mai nei ki tēnei kaupapa e pāpahau atu nei ki a koutoa rā ko Sunday Sanctuary. Ko Petra Bagust tēnei e rere ana ngā mihi ki a koutou katoa. To everyone from each corner of this country, come and rest on the branch of this sheltered tree. You are welcome to this project, this space, Sunday Sanctuary. I'm Petra Bagust, and I acknowledge you all. Now, the spiritual practice of prayer. I feel like that is a massive ocean that one could dive into and swim around for days. However, in the interests of the rest of your life, we shall restrict it to a podcast-length conversation. It may or may not interest you to know that prayer is common to every culture in the world. So every people group have a form of this, which in the English language we call prayer and which can be called karakia or inoi in te reo Māori, and that's something we go into. And I think almost every person I've ever met has engaged with it in some way. Think about it. Like you say grace maybe, or you give thanks for things, or you are in a formal occasion like a wedding or a funeral or a hui or a pōhiri, and there is karakia inoi prayer involved in those events. And then sometimes you're just like, oh God, and that in itself can be a prayer. It's something that I've done in times of desperation and in times of joy. And it's something I've done in groups and on my own. And I feel like it's changed as I've grown. So, you know what? Let's have a look. Let's have a dive. Let's have a swim. Let's have a listen to some thoughts and feelings and experiences and I guess even studies of prayer. We're going to talk to Stacey Morrison because I know that and have experienced her composing karakia, which are more like a proclamation. And we're going to talk also about what inoi or prayer is, according to her in Te Ao Māori. Producer Sam went to hang out in a 24/7 prayer room. No, he didn't hang out at an airport, where they often have those. But he went to an old stone church here in Tamakimakoto, Auckland, New Zealand, called St. Paul's. And he booked himself a little spot and he went in to see what it was like. And he came away with a couple of questions, which I put to our resident prayer maestro or professional prayer, Strahan Coleman. He's written a couple of books about it, and he is a speaker and a thinker and a doer of prayer. So I can't wait to share that with you. Right now, though, is a good time to hear from my dear friend, broadcaster, author, speaker, and te reo Māori champion. She's a wahine toa, Stacey Morrison. Tēnā koe, Stacey Morrison. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe for joining me today.
Kia ora, e pai ana.
I wanted to have a kōrero with you around this idea of karakia. You've intersected with organised religion and you are deeply embedded in te ao Māori, in the Māori world. And so I just thought, could we have a little bit of an exploration around what your experience or your understanding or both, your whakairo, your thoughts around karakia?
Tēnā koe wene whakaaro rangatira. I think karakia, the easy translation, people say blessing or prayer. I guess the one that resonates best for me, and I know for my husband as well, is an incantation, because it's incanting intention, energy, beliefs, whakapapa, hopes, determinations. So it's incanting what you want to occur and who you believe will be helping you. It's a little bit different in terms of approach, from what I understand of what we would, people tend to call prayer, being a request or a plea or an inoi to God or to the gods, whereas karakia is more a relationship to say, perhaps to certain atua, to certain deities, this is what I need. This is more of a direct relationship rather than one where I consider that something can be bestowed upon me. It's like I see the connection that we have together in terms of whakapapa and our relationship as atua and people. And it's more of a tono, I guess, like a request, and a sort of shared intention. So I guess that's an inherent difference, but I understand why blessing or prayer is kind of an easy way to translate. And I do think, when I have been in church, and so probably the Anglican faith is the one I've had the most experience of and connection to, some things might seem like they don't relate to each other, or perhaps they contradict each other, but to me, they don't really. There's a lot of similarities of intention. And one thing on a human level is to be quiet and to be mindful and intentional about how you feel spiritually. So, yeah, like you say, there's intersections, there's differences, but I personally don't feel like they are mutually exclusive. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying in terms of that. How could we maybe hold space and be, the word I keep wanting to kind of feel like is like the ability to breathe, the ability to allow ideas and experiences to be held, not necessarily in tension, but in tandem maybe with one another. And so even as you were discussing your whakaaro, or even your comprehension of karakia as like relationship, I would say that's my felt sense with prayer, is being in relationship with atua, and then you are kind of exchanging these ideas, or there is a request at times, and then there is just conversation at times, like this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. And I love that idea even of whakapapa, because even like, I don't know, just that sense of belonging, like this is my heritage. I'd love to ground it in a real world experience. And I know that for a lot of people, reclaiming their reo, reclaiming their language involves so much courage and so much hard work and so much bravery and potentially so much mamai, so much pain. Can you tell me how, because I've heard you offer karakias for tauira who are studying.
Yeah, I think one thing about karakia is you sort of bookends things, because how we kind of just rush in between things and don't go, okay, this is what I need to do. If we're saying, it's kind of like preparation for any big event, especially for learning, I think it's good to go, okay, there is mamai, there's stuff here that I'm going to have to, that I will feel in the course of, say, learning my language or whatever I'm about to do now. And so I am acknowledging that. I am also looking at a higher opportunity to believe that I can do it, so it's like calling on all the resources that I got, but also just sitting in a place where you go, right, this is what I'm going to do. And sometimes it is hard, for instance, with learning te reo Māori, because if you say you're going to do it and then it's harder than you realise, then, all my excuses are running out. So for me, in terms of karakia, I wouldn't say that I find them easy, like rote learning isn't that easy for me. But, what my husband can do to, in terms of karakia for just endlessly for, say, an hour, when they're opening whare and things like that. I do think there's some people who that's their bent and that's their talent and that's their, their super skills. And for some of us, I don't think that's me, but then I do find sometimes that, I guess, dealing with emotion and what karakia can do and what, what female energy can do, I guess that's where I sort of go, this all makes sense. I don't even need to think about it.
Yeah, so many thoughts there in terms of what you were just saying about a ritual opening and a ritual closing. You're right, we are full pace from this to this to this, and that is productivity, and that is making the most of it, and that's carpe diem, and all those feel like quite modern concepts, and that moment to quiet, to still, to hold a space for. Perhaps prepare for the difficulty ahead. It's like there's some. It's like asking for the strength that you need, but also acknowledging that it's there for you, isn't it?
Yeah, and so whether it helps you to go, right, this is what I'm summoning. What I notice is, if I give the example of the nighttime karakia that we've always done with our tamariki, is that even now they're teenagers, and sort of, my 13 or 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old, be rolling her eyes. I go, ai ona te rangi, ai ona te whenua, ai ona te ao katoa. And I can see her start to yawn while she's rolling her eyes. So, there's a cue, there's a, connection with that karakia, so it can cue behaviour.
Yeah,
so there's that as well. But then also I just notice my breathing might change, or I feel more grounded in my puku, that kind of thing, just feel settled and get some comfort from that. So I think you don't do that if you're rushing and not thinking about it. You know what I mean? You need those moments to be still and say, for instance, at the time of matariki, I think everyone can relate to being out pre-dawn in the cold and the dark and just taking those moments. It's naturally quiet, and then any human will go, wow, okay, the reflection is natural and totally human. So yeah, some of those things, I'm just really grateful that we have these ways of connecting that are so unique and distinct to this whenua, and also, to where we come from. And then I'm also mindful that because the language is the way that carries it, for some people, it feels like it's a little bit far away, like, so you kind of need this to unlock the door.
Yeah. And even as you mention, like, there are karakia that are ancient, right? Like, if there's an opening karakia for hui, and the closing karakia for you for the day, and nighttime karakia, the relief of not having to create everything, of not having to make everything new, like, the decision fatigue we live with, which is like that's a shallow way of putting it, but it's this resting in the known, the familiar, the ancient. There's something deeply human about that, isn't there? Something deeply sustaining, I think.
I think, and it even comes down to the sounds and the vibrations. So, I remember it was Amy Poehler, I think, a famous American actress who I love, and she said she loves watching TikTok and watching haka on TikTok and just crying. And she goes, and I don't know what I'm feeling, but it's just immediate. And so to me, it's a frequency, it's a sound, it's a old ancient knowing. Yeah. And I love that she feels that. And I say to anyone, who feels that with te reo Māori and those particular frequencies, I think, quite an unusual tone of, chanting that comes with karakia. If you feel that, then it's part of you. But yeah, it's interesting too how it can just like make tears spring to your eyes. Yeah. But I do think one thing is to, women doing karanga as well. You'll hear that, they just hit a pitch or a frequency. You're just like, wow. And the tears start flowing. Or when we wail, those things just really hit at a universal level. And here we are trying to find words for it, but sometimes it's good to not even find words for it. Yeah.
I'll call us back to many of the things you've said and the examples you've given are felt. See, they're physical experiences. They are a change in breathing, the experience of, the awe or wonder of the stars or nature, the quietness, the tears, the reverberations. I think so often it's easy to be like, I have to do this right, or I have to get this right, or I have to activate in the right way, and yet so much of how you are describing your experience of karakia is physical. And not necessarily having to have this logical sense even. Like it's experiential, it's physical, it's spiritual.
Yeah. And experiencing spirituality, sometimes people need to know what does that mean? and it can be all those things. And people feel very personal about it, and so they should, because it's not up to anyone else to tell you how you experience your spirituality. But like I enjoy and admire, people who have different ways of expressing it, and I think that's really interesting. Even how they've, the physicality of how they express it, that's cool too. And I'd say that's also what's happening with haka and waiata as well. That's like a force being with you, so that's why it's so impactful. And also, I like the fact that you can, like some karakia, like ancient ones in particular, do have a responsibility and a need to be word perfect. And that's when some people are trained to do that, and that's because of, our beliefs around having to be word perfect. But in terms of an accessible everyday practice, there are ways for us to, not be expecting that we're going to lead waka across the oceans or anything, or open, whare whakairo, carved houses or anything. So we can actually just take it to what we're trying to share as a service. So I remember my husband and I talking about that for Matariki, and when we had the first public holiday and the first national broadcast of Matariki, and they were all doing karakia from Te Papa. And when, that's a big responsibility, and they also have for the first time the subtitles going along simultaneously. So anyone who's a good enough speaker would know if you messed it up. So a lot of pressure. But what helps is when you think, okay, I'm just providing a service. This is not so much about performance as service.
How would you, do you have any personal experience of inoi in a different way?
Yes, mostly led by others. And that's like right across, your different faiths, Anglican and
Inoi.
Inoi, yeah.
Inoi kei pāpai karakia kei katoa.
So my husband's like, he's not listening, but he is. But he goes, he anō, kōrero mai anō, inoi kei te...
Inoi kei pāpai karakia kei katoa. Karakia takea mai anu te ama inoi takea mai anu te topono tākea.
He didn't actually hear the question, but yeah. No, so the inoi is a request, right? And a tono, and karakia is more like a tono, like a, more like a
continuing?
No, tono. So like, this is what I want to happen. But so it's different. Yeah. So inoi, being more,
proclamation?
No, inoi is more like it's more that relationship. So it's like a request to a power on high, more than a tono is like, this is what I want you to do. So it's the relationship's slightly different. But in terms of experiencing inoi or prayer, yes, I mean, our Father, Reverend in Ohine Mutu is like so amazing at integrating both and being so, he's just an amazing communicator and orator. That's part of it. But he's really good at giving space for both. So there'll be his Anglican karakia, and then he'll bring in those doing karakia Māori. And that's where it's really, like, to me, it's an amazing example.
So good. You know, I don't know if you'd call a karakia a po, but you can imagine them kind of at the beginning and at the end of a meeting, and they kind of, you know, they hold space.
Yeah.
Stacey Morrison, yeah. Thank you so much for unpacking karakia, for your experience of it, and also for us as many of us non-Māori speakers. Really, really appreciate it.
You're not a non-Māori speaker. You speak Māori.
I'm desperate to, I'm like, my husband is full-time psychology right now. I'm like, one day it's going to be my turn again, and I'm going to go back into the reo. And I'm like, wow.
Iara. You know, if you're speaking a little bit every day, e mana nui tō tēnā mahi. Yeah, I think that's something we underrate as well. It's like, you don't have to be perfect. I'm not a tohunga. We don't need to be all those things. But what I do know is that you're always in wānanga. So that's that would mean that you're always learning anyway.
Always learning, yeah. That's how I aim to live, always learning. Yeah, kia ora. I really enjoyed the way Stacey has a language for different types of prayer, like karakia and inoi, that she has an experience or an understanding or an engagement with karakia in a way that is not just free form, it's not just her making it up, and yet creatively she can compose and create karakia, but she has this backstop of her husband, I guess other te reo Māori speakers, and also her whakapapa, her ancestors. So she has this deep wealth of experience and knowledge and I guess power to draw on. So it was really lovely to kind of unpack her understanding and experience of karakia. Very cool. Coming up, we delve into what prayer can be and how it can kind of bust out of the confines of our traditional thinking of what it is, whether that is rote learning or free-forming. It shows up in so many different ways, and we're going to listen to, I guess, some of your thoughts about prayer. Feel free to send this episode to a friend who might appreciate it. And honestly, if you are willing to leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice, like iTunes or Spotify, that would be amazing. Like, just say what you like about it. You can say what you don't like as well, but in a review like this, I'd lean towards the positive. We are at Sunday Sanctuary NZ on Instagram. You can find us there. And if you'd ever want to get involved in our community life, like have your say, that's where to go, at Sunday Sanctuary NZ on Instagram. Also, you cannot come into the studio. No, you are not a podcast puppy today.
Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
The moment I wake up, before I put on my makeup, I say a little prayer for you. And while combing my hair now, and wondering what dress to wear now, I say a little prayer for you. Forever, forever, you stay in my heart, and I will love you forever, ever, ever, part of how I love it. Together, that's how it must be to live without you. Would only be heartbreak for me.
That was a little snippet of I Say a Little Prayer by the magnificent Aretha Franklin. And interesting, the Say a Little Prayer, there's something so casual about that, right? So ordinary, so relatable, so daily. And in that version of prayer, it's offered by one person for another. which is kind of cool. It's like prayer can be a gift. For many people, that's a fully classic example of prayer, and inoi, as Stacey talked about. I'd love to play you another example of prayer. This is the character of George Bailey in the 1946 movie It's a Wonderful Life, and it's played by iconic actor James Stewart. It's this moment in the bar where he is wretched. You can see the tension on his face. It's almost like, is it sweat or is it tears? He is gripped by self-doubt and just an existential angst. And everybody else around him is celebrating Christmas. This is his prayer.
God. Dear Father in heaven, I'm not a praying man, but if you're up there and you can hear me, show me the way. I'm at the end of my rope, right? Show me the way, oh God.
And those kind of end of the tether, end of the line prayers are maybe some of the most common to humanity. Like, those ones have hardly any words in them from my experience, and they can actually cut away all the dross and all the noise and just get to the very heart of what is needed or desired, or just to the desperation. I've found those prayers to be useful and also highly effective. We went to you, our community, and said, what is prayer to you? And when was the last time you prayed? Christina says, prayer for me is sitting with God. Kay offered this idea that prayer is an almost constant touching fingertips, that God is as close to me as breath. Christina said, I used to see it as a chore, and then this thing happened, and long story short, now I see it as an invitation. Prayer means a lot to me, and I pray every day. I find prayer comforting, said Gail. In answer to the question, what is prayer to you? Amanda said, relationship. And I love to chat and share my heart to the Lord. I love prayer in the morning. It sets me up. Sophie said, it feels like running into a big, safe bear hug with tears, joy, fear, anything. The last time I prayed was an hour ago for my hubby's safety and to release my fear to God. Prayer is a lifeline and an ongoing conversation with my great big God who is near. And one person posed this question. I've always wondered, what's the point in prayer if God knows everything? And I think my response to that would be that prayer is viscerally a conversation, that it is the ability to both give and receive. So I have conversations with people I love and care about, even though I know a lot about them and even though I might know a lot about how they feel about a topic. So sometimes I wonder if the prayer is as much for my own ears as it is for God's. Prayer is as much posing questions to divine love and asking and sitting in the space of receiving something from the divine. I think prayer can even be, in essence, not purposeful, like it's not this very directive exchange, but it can be this space to inhabit, this relationship to inhabit, a conversation to partake of. So those are some of my thoughts. Thank you so much for yours.
Breathe in, breathe out. Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
At their most simple, the Hebrew and Greek words that get translated into English in the Bible as prayer are about making requests, expressing our wishes. Prayer has come to encapsulate much more than that, but sometimes it's helpful to come back to that simple idea, inoi. So, prayer is, at its heart, an expression of hope. We make requests and express wishes because we hope. We pray because we have hope, a hope in something beyond ourselves. It's easy to think of this in terms of thoughts, words, and even feelings, expressions of the mind. But Holy Communion gives us a way to bring those thoughts, words, and feelings to a physical, embodied action. And just as many kneel to pray as a physical embodiment of humility and the expression of hope towards God, so the physical act of receiving bread and wine is also an embodiment of that hope. We say yes to it, whether we have a clear understanding and feeling about it or not, because we have a hope in something beyond ourselves, a hope in the action of God embodied in Jesus. We take these elements that are external, they're not part of our body, and we consume them. They become part of us. What we place our hope in is given to us, drawn into us, and becomes part of us. It changes us. With this understanding, we can see Holy Communion as an answer to our prayer, our hope. If prayer is reaching beyond ourselves in hope, Holy Communion is a receiving of the one who is the answer to all hope. Without this embodiment, it's really easy to feel like prayer is simply throwing our hope out into the ether, a chasing after vapour, a useless and vain grasping of nothingness. When it feels like that, we continue in faith and trust. But Holy Communion gives us something tangible. In its physicality, it reminds us that we're not alone and our prayers are heard. That was Come Ye by Nina Simone. Not a very long song, but the lyrics are good. I like them. I also like peace, and I like not having fear. So I think it's a good time now to bring in producer Sam, who sent himself off to a 24/7 prayer room that was not in an airport or a hospital, but was in fact a destination he had to hop into his car and drive to. So you went over to St Paul's, you booked a time.
Because I'd heard that St Paul's had sort of set aside what they call the Lady Chapel inside their cathedral as a 24/7 prayer room. And I was thinking, well, they've done that. We're making an episode about prayer. The timing's just a bit too good for us not to try and turn this into something. Okay, I made it in. I actually forgot where the chapel was for a second. But, you know, kind of fun exploring the inside of St Paul's Cathedral. It's just after 10 o'clock. I'm a couple minutes late. And I'll be here until about 11. So I'm going to turn this off now, I think. The reason I knew about this is because my flatmate runs all of the events that St Paul's does. And so it's her job to sort of set up the space. And she did really well because it's usually pretty connected to the rest of the open cathedral, but the way that she had decorated the space and things that she had hung made it feel a lot more cut off and kind of a small, more private thing.
Nice.
So yeah, it was really good. There was, you know, couches if you wanted to sit, pews if you wanted to get real traditional, cushions on the floor, pen and paper, different, you know, things that you could engage with, or you could just, you know,
sit by yourself.
Yeah, basically. I think I'd gone into it thinking, oh, this, you know, the timing lines up. It's going to be great. Like, this is
I'm going to have this amazing experience.
Yes, yeah. And then I woke up on the morning of and was leaving my house and going to go past the office before heading into St Paul's. I was thinking, but what if nothing happens out the other side and there's no story? You know, what if I come back to the office and talk to you and talk to Josh and just say, well,
I went. It was quiet.
And that's about it, you know?
Yep.
And so I was a little bit worried about that. But then also when I left, I did kind of realise, well, I guess there's an element of needing to trust God and whatever the outcome of this is.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
So you go and you go to this room for an hour.
Yeah.
And actually you kind of go with the hope that something may happen.
Yes.
But the recognition that also it may be relatively plain.
I'd gone in with a few things that were kind of on my mind and I was keen to sort of pray about in the more traditional sense that one might think about praying as something being more verbal.
Mm-hmm.
But
did you pray out loud?
No, not so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just prayed. You prayed in your head?
Yeah, I guess so.
Or in your heart?
Yeah. And Strahan Coleman is someone that both you and I have looked to for kind of guidance on different ways of approaching prayer in the past. And he's a big fan of sitting in, I guess, what he would call contemplative silence as a way of just kind of, as he would say, sitting in God's presence and just, you know, letting that continuation of relationship be a form of prayer. And I'd seen a few clips of Strahan's on Instagram before going in.
Oh, yeah.
First one of which kind of frustrated me.
Okay.
Because he was talking about just learning to sit in silence and feel God's presence. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, what the heck does he mean? You know, that like I'm not feeling anything.
What will it feel like?
Yeah. And I was like, what does he mean by saying that? So it was a little bit annoying, but then I did, and actually to the point where it was kind of distracting. I was getting a little bit like, what the heck are you on about, Strahan? And then I remembered the second thing that he had said, which was how in life more broadly, the context that some of the most intimate moments in life happen within is actually just silence. No one's saying anything. No one's really doing anything.
It's true.
Yeah.
Intimacy, it's profound, right? If you're really, really close and really comfortable with someone and you are together silent. It's quite amazing.
It is.
And so, how was that when you remembered that? What was that like for you?
I think remembering that just let me kind of sit there and not it was okay to just sit there because all of a sudden it didn't feel so important that I'd be feeling something,
You could sit there and be.
Yeah, totally. And so it was a lot easier to just kind of sit there and, remove any expectations because if I think about my experience of prayer up until this point in time, I'm not someone who experiences a bunch of tangible feelings, and there are other people out there who can quite clearly feel as a felt sense the presence of God. Mm-hmm. And I'm not one of those people. Mm-hmm. It was quite a relief to just kind of sit there and just let it be what it was going to be. I think I must have sat there in that kind of state for maybe, 15, 20 minutes towards the end of my time. And I'd sort of hidden my phone so it wasn't in my pocket. That's something I actually quite often do if I'm praying, is I'll take my wallet and my keys and my phone out of my pocket and put them on the ground somewhere just so I can't feel the weight of them there.
Nice.
But sadly, that didn't stop Josh, our colleague, ringing me.
Well, you were at work.
I was technically at work, but even with my phone wedged between the rug and a couch cushion, it was still vibrating quite loudly, and so Josh ruined the whole thing.
Yeah, he did.
Right towards the end, though. But overall, I guess I came away from it realizing, I haven't had any earth-shattering realization, but it felt like just kind of a continuation of my relationship with God and how that goes.
And it sounds like you're at peace with that. It sounds like there's an okayness to that.
Getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting there. But I did come away from that with a couple of questions, which I thought I could pass to you as something of a question baton.
Excellent.
To pass to Strahan.
I consider the question baton passed to me. And let's go have a chat with Strahan Coleman, who is a speaker, a singer-songwriter, an author, and somebody who is a friend of Sunday Sanctuary. Tēnā koe, Strahan Coleman. It is a pleasure to hang out with you virtually.
Kia ora, my friend. It's so good to be back with you.
Honestly, would you mind if we just opened the door and wandered inside this huge mansion, this universe called prayer? Just try a couple of doors out, just have a little look. Mm-hmm. Because in so many ways, I feel like my life hasn't scratched the surface of what or how or why or in what delicious ways prayer could reveal itself or show up or be partaken of. You've written a couple of books, Prayer Volume 1 and Prayer Volume 2, which I've already told our audiences I give to my children when they go to university. They're very easy, they fit in the back pocket. You've also written Beholding and Thirsting, and you run prayer workshops. What do you call them? What's their proper name?
Great question. I call them prayer schools. They're kind of a combination of community prayer and learning. Yeah, and retreats.
Cool. Awesome. My personal journey, just to lay it out, has been, I think, probably gone from these unstructured conversations with God that sometimes sound like shopping lists, that sometimes sound like journal entries, that sometimes sound like just my favourite prayers have been 3-word prayers like, take me there or get me out of here or, like just help. Like my most effective prayers have been things like, I need an audience. I remember that prayer. Or questions. What can we do? Like they have been kind of gut, bypass my brain, just like, bleh, this is where I'm at, just very honest. And the more I engage with prayer, the more I've gone, oh my goodness, look at this. There are beautifully crafted prayers that have been spoken over thousands of years. Look, this one's only been made like a couple of hundred years ago. Wow, there's a way of opening a space or holding a space or closing a space with this prayer. And now I feel like, I'm breathing today, therefore I'm praying. Can you tell me where you're at with prayer and like what, just anything really?
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, I appreciate the journey that you're describing because I think I think it's important. I think what changed prayer for me was realizing that prayer is kind of a progression and a journey. It's not that there's one way to pray, that we pray our whole lives. In the same way as love's a progressive journey. Do you know what I mean? When we fall in love with somebody, that love is constantly changing over time, and it should change over time, because if love doesn't mature and grow and become more other focused, then it stays really immature. Prayer's the same. And so I think when I think of the prayer journey, I kind of think, well, some writers have talked about it in 4 stages. It's like the first stage is just kind of maybe a moralism and a transactionalism, a kind of, I need this, what you were describing.
Shopping list
kind of stuff.
Can you do this for me, God, and make this better? Yeah.
Which is great, isn't it? Because that's what children are like when as they're growing. It's like, I need this, Dad, I need that, Dad, and I'm going to slowly help them figuring out themselves. And then that kind of develops more into an interior focus. And so prayer starts to move inward, and we start to have an attentiveness towards stillness and life and hope and joy internally. And we go, oh, hang on a second. God lives inside me, and therefore there's like an internal dialogue that wants to take place. And so it begins to move inward, but there's still this kind of focus outwardly, like I'm busy in the world and I'm doing things. And then it kind of progresses into this, actually, I'm realizing that the deepest desire that I have is to know and experience divine love. And therefore I'm going to have a singular pursuit of connecting my desire with this eternal desire. And that deeper stage, it's like asking things, moving inward, and then that deeper prayer of desire kind of changes all the different forms that we use. So at different times we might pray, liturgical prayers, or we might pray the quick one-worders or whatever. And most of the time that doesn't change, but how we experience those things changes depending on the stage of prayer that we are in our spirituality, if that makes sense.
I also like, what I'm hearing is I don't have to reject any of my former selves, my former praying versions or my former prayers, right? It's not like, even because there's a temptation, I think, in our society to start to do better. So I don't have to try and quickly climb the stair to heaven of prayer. Do you know what I mean? Like I am this wonderful, mature prayer. I hear the word desire in your sentences, and I know that's a focus of yours. So I'd love to scratch around in that concept of desire. But there's this, like for myself, there's in my sacred text, the Bible, it says, pray constantly. And so my curious mind goes, holy heck, how do I achieve that? Like, how do you, like if I'm cooking, like how can I be doing all these things at once? And so my other part of my brain goes, well, look, if we've been suggested or asked or encouraged to do this, it must be possible. So how could it be possible to pray constantly? And then I'm like, for me, the answer is breathing. I'm always breathing. What if I allowed my inhale and my exhale to be a prayer? But that's not my only form of prayer, because then that's for me too subconscious. Like that's too, that's not allowing me to kind of dig in and reach in. And I wonder, even when you were talking about that divine love, is another name for that, like the ultimate intimacy, like to be known, to be seen, and to be absolutely, utterly okay and accepted. Like there's it's just really it's really robust, right? It is. Yeah, and I totally agree. I think what I think about prayer is that at the start, maybe music's a great metaphor, is that when you're starting out in music, you're just learning a lot of scales, and it's the worst, because anybody who wants to play music, like I remember learning drums, and you're learning like paradiddles, which are these just like random taps, and it's really, really frustrating. But the more that you learn the scales and the rhythms and the theory, then you're able to more freely kind of riff and solo and write songs. And the point of the scales is not so much to be obsessed with the scales, it's to help you freeform in music. And so when I think about prayer, we have similar modes. So we might read the prayers of others, or we might pray the Lord's Prayer, or whatever our kind of space is. They're really there to help us get our brains and our hearts and our minds and our bodies in track.
But the deeper place, no musician would ever say that that's what they wake up in the morning for. Eventually what would happen is that these scales and these rhythms become intuitive, and then they're just kind of happening within you. And then all you need to do is pick up a guitar and you're away, and you're able to express yourself more honestly because you have some structure. But any musician that gets stuck on the chords is never going to be satisfied. And so I think in prayer, if we see some of the forms of prayer, like I've already mentioned, liturgy, reading the prayers of others, just other things, that's the scales. But the real free-form stuff is vulnerability. It is that constant willingness to be seen in all of our brokenness. And this is what I love about the Christian story, and what I love about the teachings of Jesus, is they invite us to be fully seen in all of our brokenness. It doesn't deny the fact that I'm a mess and that I have things that I want to fix and I can't, and that I make mistakes. And even the intentions of my heart sometimes are just so selfish. It's being able to live that way, fully seen by love, fully seen by God, and yet welcomed and embraced. And I think that deeper vulnerability, that willingness to be seen for who I am and loved and accepted, is that unceasing prayer. And so it's just developing that consciousness and awareness of God. That doesn't mean that I don't need to know about scales and I don't need to have an understanding and flow in that too. It just means that the deeper place is that vulnerability and kind of intimate connection with God. Yeah.
I'm going to ask if we can, I loved your band metaphor, by the way, because you get to play with others too, right? You get to, it's just so it's so generous. It's so flexy. You can, you can learn sheet music. You can freeform and riff with others. You can be on your own. You can be in a group or a duo or whatever. Okay. We sent producer Sam, when I say we sent, he had this great idea that he book a space at a local church in the city that was just doing 24/7 prayer. So you book your hour and you go into this chapel, and there's that idea, I guess, of places where people have prayed, right? There are sacred spaces in the world. There's Mecca, there are cathedrals, there are shrines, there are holy sites, there's, the Wailing Wall. There are many, many places that are sacred and holy to so many different cohorts of people. So this is a chapel. You go in there and you pray for an hour. And he took a recorder, knowing that being there and on his own, there wouldn't be a lot to record. But he came away with some questions, and this is, I think, something that it's worth discussing. So one of his questions was, what does it mean to just sit and notice the presence of God? If prayer can be sitting and noticing the presence of divine love, what does that mean? He said, what are we supposed to be looking for or noticing?
Well, that's a question that people have written very long books about for thousands of years, trying to make sense of it. But I think that, the Psalms, if you think about the biblical writings, the Psalms is in the Bible are just this whole book of poetry, basically beautiful poetry. And they talk a lot about stillness and quietness and being still in God. And I think one of the things that we're listening for when we're sitting in the quiet for God is, first of all, we're listening to ourselves, because the first thing anyone will notice when they stop is the noise within us becomes very loud. Worries that we have, anxieties, fear, unforgiveness, it all just ramps up. And so the first thing we discover is what we're bringing to the table with God. And so that's really important. And if we can acknowledge all of those things and simply say, okay, these are here, and not kind of ruminate on them or grab the thoughts or try to fight them, we just let them kind of wave through, then after a certain period of time, we'll kind of dive underneath those things, and we'll enter a kind of a very quiet, still peace, a quiet, still presence. And, in the Christian theology, that is kind of centering ourselves in the presence of God that He's given us. And what we're really trying to do is to let that love, that stillness and that peace rise to the surface. And, you know, another metaphor is that God's voice is more of a whisper. He's not really out there trying to like get our attention and scream in our busy lives. He's waiting for us. He's waiting for us to slow down and stop. And so what sitting quietly does in prayer is it allows us to kind of lower ourselves to God's volume. And then we're able to gently experience this presence of love and of peace and of longing and this burning heart of God, which is, I want to know you. I want to be with you. I want you to know what it feels like to be fully known and seen. And so sitting in that quiet place is about drawing down into God, whereas I think a lot of people imagine we have to draw up into God.
Because I'm imagining as you're saying that presence or noticing can be a felt sense in the body, can't it?
Yes.
It can be.
Yeah.
It could be a thought, but it could be an emotion, or it could be a sensation inside the body.
Yeah.
And the gentleness could be surprising. Like, you're right. There's this feeling, I think, of older conception of God as being out there and, you know, large and action and, you know, whatever. And yet it's Sam's second question was, how can we find meaning and value in silence and stillness when we live in a world that demands constant doing and movement? Sam goes, is it through repetition? Because I can suspect if I was to do this, I have ADHD, I could do this for every day. I'd never do anything every day except for eat food because it's delicious. But if I was doing it every day, it could take weeks for me to make what I felt was progress.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Man, longer.
Years.
Years.
No, I was going to say months. I just didn't want to be discouraging.
I mean, I have to confess, like I learned this way of being with God, not because I studied books and was taught about it, but because I was chronically sick for 3 years. So, and that's how long it took me, because I'm stubborn and thick and very heady and, you know, lots of anxiety in the past up there and lots of busy-mindedness. So I basically spent 3 years quietly sitting sick and unwell at a retreat center, and that's how I was forced into it. So there are no frills in my understanding, but food's a great example, right? I mean, if you are eating takeaways every day, eating a bowl of ice cream at night and drinking a bottle of whiskey, and then someone says, you'll feel better if you eat a salad, and then you keep doing that, and then one day you eat a salad for lunch, and then like that afternoon you think, I don't feel any better at all. Well, someone's going to say, well, the reason you don't feel better is because it's going to take time for your body to detox all of the bad nutrients and the malnourishment. And prayer's the same. And so I think in order to find and discover God in prayer, it really does require turning up every day in a committed way, and just giving it time and having grace on ourselves and going, this is going to take a little bit of time because I live in a noisy world. I'm used to all of my thoughts and everything in my head and my feelings. It's going to take me a while to drop down. And I think that's probably the part that a lot of people get tripped up on, is they go and sit in silence for an hour and it's a nightmare, or even 10 minutes. Do you know what I mean? You don't even have to have ADHD for it to be horrible. And I can't even imagine what it's like with that. So I think it takes grace. I think it takes commitment. And for that reason, that's why it matters to me. You have to have a beautiful and profound vision of what you're heading toward. Otherwise, I think the journey will feel like it costs too much.
As always, such a delight. We could talk for another 3 or 4 hours, I suspect, on this, or maybe days, months.
Yeah, that's true.
But you have just had your wisdom teeth out, and it's time for you probably to stop talking.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure, Petra. Thanks for having me.
I love how Strahan reminded me of the joy of prayer being both verbal and non-verbal, external and internal, in great need and in great joy. And I would love to practice more silent contemplation, kind of inoi and karakia. So I hope you've enjoyed this journey as much as we have, and I will leave you with this. It's called the Prayer of St. Aidan. Leave me alone with God as much as may be. As the tide draws the waters close in upon the shore, make me an island set apart, alone with you, God, holy to you. Then, with the turning of the tide, prepare me to carry your presence to the busy world beyond, the world that rushes in on me, till the waters come again and fold me back to you.